I want you to move from overwhelmed by information to confident in what really matters. I want to help you move from being unsure towards direction and purpose in your healthcare. I want to introduce you to health experts. I want to let you in on tough conversations on women's health. I want to give you a place where you can lean in and learn how to take care of yourself. Let's transform your health. Let's get clear on your goals. This is Women's Health Unplugged. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Robertson, naturopathic doctor. Welcome to a solo chat on Women's Health Unplugged. I'm Dr. Jordan Robertson. Today we're going to talk about a topic that, honestly, it's such a simple conversation, but I find it is one that often creates a lot of overwhelm with a side of inaction. We're going to talk about smoothies. We're going to talk about protein shakes and some of the questions and obstacles and concerns and challenges that I have watched people make over the last, or people struggle with really, over the last 10 years. It sounds like such a simple prescription for us to tell patients that we want them to make a smoothie, and you can find a million different smoothie recipes online. Just like any other nutrition recommendation, I think we have tried to create rules and structure and recipes that really just move patients farther and farther away from their why, right? Like, why are you having a smoothie? And so today I want to distill down the components of the protein shake, and we're going to create the best protein shake from this conversation. So just like anything in nutrition, I'm always curious why people feel the need to include or exclude a particular component of nutrition in their life. And so if you have sat back and wondered, should I have a protein shake? I feel like I should do protein shakes. I like this idea of protein shakes. I want you to start this conversation. And I know you want me to get to the good stuff, like, what protein powder do I use, Jordan? But honestly, I want you to sit back and think about why on earth you're doing this in the first place, because so little of the time do we spend in nutrition asking this why question. And I think that if you can really nail this down, it makes the rest of the things that we're going to talk about with respect to ingredients and timing and all of that stuff way easier or way more simplified. So first, I want to ask you why on earth you're making a smoothie. Now, there are advantages, I will say, and I follow some great nutrition gurus online, and one of them recently called protein shakes convenience food and fast food. And I was like, this is perfect. I don't know why I haven't thought of using that term before, but there are multiple positive things about doing a smoothie or a protein shake. And I'm just going to use those two terms interchangeably, but we'll maybe talk about the difference between them when we get to the protein part of the podcast. But really, some of the positive things when we think about smoothies is that they're very fast, they're very convenient, they're very portable, although I will say I have poured my fair share of smoothies down the front of my outfit on the way somewhere. So maybe they're not as convenient and as portable as they should be or could be. They generally can serve as a vehicle for healthy things. And they are a simple way to start to stack health habits and behaviors on top of each other into one generally kind of simplified meal. Those are some of the positive things about a smoothie. I would say some of the negative things that are potentially getting in the way of people doing this well are things like, the knowledge of what to put in it, perhaps people's tastes, or that they don't feel particularly satiated or satisfied by a liquid meal. And so you may, do the smoothie thing, and in theory it should fill you up, but it doesn't. You need to have, of course, just like any other meal that we make, the ingredients need to literally be in your house in order for you to make it. And you also have to have relatively good equipment. So it's fine if you want to make a smoothie with banana and yogurt, but if you want to put in other complex ingredients that require pulverization, then you actually probably need a pretty decent blender at the same time. I've had my blender for probably 3 years. And prior to that, I had another blender that I'd probably had for 4 or 5 years before the motor in it died. But given that our blender is used at minimum twice a day, like minimum, sometimes it's used more than that to make soup or muffins or other things, I really don't feel like my blenders owe me anything at the end of their lifespan. And so if you have a birthday coming up, I would throw a blender on your wish list if this is not something that you already have. That's one of those kitchen gadgets that is worth its weight in gold. I'm not a big kitchen gadget person. I really don't have a lot of gadgety type things, but I cannot live without a blender, and actually have a really good blender at my cottage as well. So there's some pros and cons to doing smoothies, but really I want you to think about, why are we doing this, or why do you imagine that you should do this? Do you feel like it's solving some kind of nutritional problem for you? So for some people, the idea of the convenience is really going to outweigh anything else, right? To chop up, maybe they'd prefer a beautiful chopped up chicken salad, but there's ease in the smoothie. For some, it's the fruits and vegetable servings that they really struggle to get in during the day. And so they want to use this as a vehicle to get those things in on a more consistent basis. And that's a great idea. For many, they struggle to get in food sources of protein on a regular basis that meet their nutritional needs for whatever phase and stage of life they're in. And smoothies create this really beautiful, fast and easy way of getting a pretty sizable serving of protein that maybe is comparable to, say, a chicken breast. And so for some patients, it's actually supporting their nutrition by preventing deficiency that they otherwise would have hit if they didn't have this sort of fast and liquid meal. And for some, they're using the smoothie to deliver other positive ingredients that they have a difficult time getting in elsewhere. So again, I made the note of things like vegetables, but some people put things like their omega-3 supplement into their smoothie. Although, God, I don't know why people do that, because I feel like then the entire thing tastes like fish oil and not just 1 tablespoon. But some people will use a smoothie as a delivery method for other things. I often will use mine to deliver my creatine. Or some functional foods that you are knowing that are good for you, like ground flax, things that you may want to get in with some regularity. And so you stack the habit of doing those functional foods on top of your already good habit of doing a smoothie. Patients can put things like Metamucil and other sources of fiber in a smoothie that to help make it more palatable, or get it in with like better consistency. But if you think that you're doing a smoothie for weight loss, if you think that you're doing a smoothie for some other reason, I want you to listen hard to the rest of the conversation, because if you're doing it for some health-related outcome, but haven't put a lot of thought into the ingredients, then you might be missing the mark, right? It might not actually be doing the thing that you want it to be doing, because having a smoothie that is supporting, say, weight gain or muscle mass gain is going to be a very different smoothie than the smoothie that we're using for weight loss, which is going to be a very different smoothie that we're using as a meal replacement, say for a patient who has a chronic illness, which is going to be very different than the smoothie we're using to maybe hide some fruits and vegetables in it, but otherwise not take up too much space in your diet. So you can see that like the actual health outcome of what you're trying to achieve is going to change what you put in it. And all of a sudden, as you see all these smoothie recipes online or being suggested by others, that technically, like this is a delivery of food or functional foods. If your needs are not really being put into consideration, the way that we build this particular recipe, you can see all of a sudden why it's like you can totally be missing the mark. I've had patients that have, heard that avocado is good for them and coconut oil is good for them and hemp hearts are good for them, and they're doing their smoothie for weight loss, and yet their smoothie is like 700 or 800 calories. I've had patients who are using their smoothie as like a bulking agent, and they've put water and a half a scoop of protein powder and a little bit of berries and some spinach in it, and it turns out their smoothie is like 220 calories. So we need to think about and kind of dissect these different components of the smoothie so that you actually get it to be something that is helpful for your particular situation. And just like any other nutritional choice, it shouldn't be one that's made just because someone else is doing it or because you saw it in somebody else's news feed. So we're going to start breaking it down a little bit. And to me, there are a few different components that go into a smoothie that we're going to separate out and talk about individually. We're going to talk about the protein aspect of the smoothie slash protein shake. We're going to talk about the fruit and vegetable component. We're going to talk about like the others, right? The functional foods that you may be putting in, or the plus or minuses that you may consider putting in depending on what the goals are for that particular meal for you. And then I want to finish by talking about the liquid because we can also manipulate or change the liquid component of your smoothie, and that's also going to have an impact on as far as like what we think the actual purpose of this smoothie is. So often when we're talking about smoothies or when we're prescribing smoothies, we're doing it to create some like ease and simplicity of getting a particular food or part of your diet into your body in a way that's like easy and repetitious, and you can do it, with habit. And so that often includes a conversation around protein and protein powder, or other high protein items like a Greek yogurt or egg whites that will maybe be put into a smoothie to increase the protein content. So if you're like sitting back and listening and going like, oh, I don't put any protein in my smoothie, I didn't think that that's what I was using it for, then listen hard to this part of the conversation, because yes, your smoothie could literally just be a tasty, fruity, vegetable-y beverage that you are using to help top up your fruit and vegetable servings. And if that's you and that's what you want, that's great. But to derive some of the additional health benefits that we want, and for it to truly start to fix some of the nutritional deficiencies that are so common in patients, we need to look at their protein intake and whether or not they're actually hitting adequate numbers of protein based on their life stage and what their body's goals actually are. So the vast majority of adults need 1.5 to 1.7 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, which is going to put most patients in a sort of 90 to 130 gram range, depending on your body weight and your calorie needs. And depending on what you're doing with your body, if you're trying to make your body bigger and grow some muscle, if you're trying to lose some body fat, those numbers may shift a little bit based on your individual needs. But the actual like basic needs for humans or adults kind of stays the same. Meaning that you should not go below that 1.5 to 1.7 grams per kilo for most people. Certainly as you're listening to this and you're like, I've been told not to eat protein by my doctor, like that, you need to listen to that advice. But when we're talking about general nutritional guidelines, adults need that 1.5 grams per kilo as a minimum to help support, healthy bodily processes, but also to prevent age-related muscle loss. And when I think about what my goals are with prescribing a smoothie, it's to help patients get up into that protein gram range when they're having difficulty doing it through diet alone. And it's very common that patients, when they recount their diet, are under-fueling on the protein aspect of their diet. We generally don't have too many difficulties getting up into the right amount of carbohydrates. We definitely don't have any difficulty getting the right an amount of fat. Questionable whether or not we maybe overfuel on that number easily in our North American diet. But that protein number is one that doesn't happen by accident. And if patients are not really thinking about their protein intake, they probably are a little bit below what their body's needs are. And so a smoothie becomes this way that we can insert an additional 20, 30 grams of protein in a relatively low calorie, but also highly nutritious way. So if you wanted to compare across different protein sources, a scoop of protein powder has about 20 grams of protein, depending on the brand that you use and the type that you use, or it should have 20 grams. So go look. Some of the vegetarian protein powders are a bit less than that. But if you look, it should be about 20 grams of protein. Now, if we wanted to compare that across other types of protein, a chicken breast, may have around 20, 25 grams of protein as well. But it's more than double the number of calories, which is fine, right? Sometimes that's our goal. but it carries with it some saturated fat. Versus if we look at a hamburger, which may be maybe a kind of a small hamburger that's 20 grams of protein, it's triple the amount of calories and saturated fat that you would find in your protein powder. So for many patients who feel they need to increase their protein, they're like they imagine or think about the burger, right? If I say eat more protein, people think they need to eat more beef. But really, that smoothie actually is offering a relatively healthy way for us to support protein intake without adding saturated fat and other components of nutrition that get carried along with the meat component of most people's diets. And I'm very careful here I'm not saying that meat is bad. I'm not saying that beef is bad. All I'm saying is that depending on what your goals are, how you're going to choose to meet your protein needs is going to be different than the next person. But for many people, especially for women, hitting their protein needs and staying in and around their energy needs is something that women have a hard time managing. And protein powder is a very simple way of supporting their protein without contributing to them overfueling. There are many, many studies using whey protein powder to help support women with an appropriate amount of food and with their body weight. And part of it comes from the fact that it helps them hit those protein needs in a very nutritious way. You can put lots of other kinds of protein in your smoothie. I mentioned a couple with like Greek yogurt or using egg whites, which is kind of like the old school bodybuilder way of upping protein, but it still technically can be done. But however you look at it, if you are using your smoothie as a meal replacement, then it should have at least 20 to 30 grams of protein built into the smoothie, however you decide to do that. If your smoothie is not replacing another meal and you don't need any additional protein, then certainly you can question whether or not that part of the smoothie even needs to be there. But my guess is if you went back and added up the grams of protein you ate on an average day, a smoothie with protein powder is maybe going to be a way that you can supplement those needs without, blowing it out of the park as far as your nutritional intake. Your choice for protein powder, you've got lots of options, and I don't want to get into the super science around it, but essentially they're not all created equal, nor do they all deliver the same amount of amino acids or have the same level of digestibility or utility in your body. And there are scoring indices for different types of protein powder, with whey being sort of the gold standard, and every other protein powder falling somewhere below that 1. So whey protein is given a score of 1 on digestibility and how easily it's incorporated into muscle mass, etc. Most vegetarian protein powders, whether it's pea or hemp or rice, fall kind of in that 0.6 to 0.8 range on the protein scoring, which means that they're just not as effective at growing and supporting muscle mass. That the evidence is pretty clear that if patients can tolerate whey protein powder, which is generally a lactose-free product, so digestibility is usually pretty easy, that whey is actually considered to be the gold standard. There are other options out there. You can get beef-based protein powder, but really you want to just sort of take whichever protein you choose sort of into context as far as how it fits in with your diet. I would say if you're a regular omnivore and you want to use a vegetarian or vegan protein powder, you're probably not missing out on any nutritional needs. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, you may want to be more selective with the kind of protein powder you choose and ensure that it delivers everything that you actually need nutritionally, which you may have gaps just based on your diet preference. So that's sort of that first thought is this smoothie delivering protein? Is the goal of it delivering protein, and how are you going to do that? That's kind of the first decision that you have to make. The second one is are you going to use this smoothie to deliver additional things like fruits and vegetables and functional food? And sometimes the answer is no, right? Sometimes the answer is protein powder and water, because the goal is just to top up a totally fine and regular nutritional day, and there is nothing needed beyond the additional protein amount. And I occasionally will have a protein shake that is literally just protein powder and water, because my needs on that day don't exceed that. It doesn't need to be this big epic meal. It's not replacing anything. It's supplementing my protein needs because I couldn't get it otherwise. So Maybe I take a salad to work and, my regular Greek yogurt little snack that I take and protein powder and water because you know, maybe my kids stole all the leftover meat actually is probably what happened there. And so I took some protein powder and water to top up my lunch, right? That's a perfect example. People will sometimes use protein powder and water in and around their workouts to try and ensure that their protein amounts are great. And you know what, if you're an elite athlete or if you're performing for your sport as part of your job or as an athlete or amateur athlete, then the timing of your smoothies and whatnot may matter more. But for the average Jane, it really doesn't matter what time I have my smoothie, and it may not really matter what time you have yours. It's just that we want to have the smoothie. And that easily digestible protein done in and around your workout, usually after, is a great way to help support muscle growth. But it's not like a hard, fast rule that you're gonna, atrophy and lose all of your progress if you don't have a smoothie after your workout. Most of us don't need to worry about that actually. So that second part of the veggies and fruit, again, it's thinking about what your higher purpose is here with the smoothie. Are we using it as a delivery method for other parts of your nutrition? So I would say for most people, they would benefit from incorporating like 1 to 2 servings of fruits or vegetables. 2 to 3 would be fantastic. Just depends on your likes and tastes and the texture that you're going to get at the other end of the blending. But some options of things that you can put in, like, are some of the like low glycemic fruits, like berries, or some of the higher glycemic fruits on purpose because you want the carbohydrates from them, like a banana. You have a million different options on the fruit front. And I would say in general, the fruit, I want to use that as a way to deliver fruits that I want in on a regular basis. So I'm a real big fan of the polyphenols that are in the berry family, as far as it's supporting our cognitive health and focus during the day. And so that's one way. If I tell a patient that they need to put half a cup of blueberries in their smoothie every day, it's one way that I'm sure that they're going to build on that habit and get it in pretty regularly. But really the fruit component, if you're not like eating a functional fruit like blueberries, you're probably using the fruit for taste and texture. I will say some of the fruits don't sit well. So when you blend blueberries and then let the whole mixture sit for like 6 hours, it will separate or congeal because of the fiber in the blueberries. But you're choosing the fruit component for taste and texture. You might want frozen berries. I find frozen berries and frozen bananas to be a great addition. We in our house have like a fruit graveyard where when things start to like get a little bit bad or mushy, we have a massive like Ziploc bag that's a fruit graveyard in the freezer. So peaches or like a half a peach that gets left behind by my kids, I just throw it all in this like fruit, I call it the fruit graveyard, in the freezer. And then we use them as smoothie ingredients later. So I like feed them back to my kids later, just in a smoothie. But that's, for using frozen vegetables is a great way to ensure that you always have the things like the bare essentials that you would need to make a smoothie. The vegetable component is where I want people to always focus more and not because fruits are bad or the sugar in fruits are the devil, like that's not it at all. It's that we generally have a harder time meeting our vegetable needs during the day, whereas people may have incorporated their fruits like with ease and their number of serving of vegetables is pretty low. So I want patients to focus on, 1 to 2 servings of vegetables that are also going to go in that smoothie. There's lots of options. I love to incorporate like 1 serving of green vegetables, whether that's spinach or spinach. Kale is not a thing for me. If you've been following along and listening along, you know that I like detest kale. I will put it in a smoothie if I'm trying to like literally just prevent it from going in the grain bin. But frozen spinach or fresh spinach is a great option. Again, it's quite fibrous. And so if you put too much in, it's going to get gross if it has to sit during the day. I've had some like separated, like very like science experiment looking things in my mason jar by the time I have lunch. And actually my staff joke, they're like, Jordan, if this like naturopath thing doesn't work out, like smoothie bar should not even be in the top 10 like considerations of your next career based on how gross these look. But the vegetable component could look like lots of things. So I will often use my smoothie to help deliver a high amount of potassium. And we talked about potassium on the podcast that I did looking at salt and the impact that has on blood pressure. But for me, I can keep my bloating and kind of like water retention lower if I incorporate more potassium in my diet. So I will put cucumbers and zucchini and cauliflower. I will put celery into my smoothie, literally just to hide an extra serving or two of vegetables inside my shake. And those ones that I listed there are ones that are relatively tasteless. You'll taste the celery for sure, but it actually kind of grows on you pretty quickly. And so that's why I choose sort of like that vegetable component is like, can I squeeze in some like really like high water content vegetables like celery or cucumber and literally just use my smoothie as a way to deliver more fruits and vegetables. I find when I'm at work, I don't do the raw vegetable thing very well. I will like happily eat a fruit and vegetable platter if someone cuts it up and puts it out. But I'm less likely to cut those things up and take it to work for me. It's way easier for me to just blend it in a smoothie and I just take it with me. But that's how I choose sort of that fruit and vegetable component. And it depends. Again, there's a big difference between the smoothie that's just protein powder and water and the smoothie that's got a serving of fruit and 2 servings of vegetables in it as far as like how full you're going to feel afterwards. The difference between a smoothie and juicing is that we leave behind all of the fiber, which is so positive in the fruits and vegetables. And that's partly what creates that feeling of satiety and fullness. It's also what makes the smoothie look like really gross if it sits for hours. But that fiber component of it is something we actually want in order to create that feeling of fullness and help support your gut microbiome and all of those things. Then there's the other, right? The other stuff people put in their smoothie. And I've left out things like avocado into the other component because in my opinion, if we're going to add avocado, if we're going to add nut butter, if you're going to add chia seeds or hemp hearts or ground flax, there should be like some purpose behind adding those things and really kind of like based on what those foods provide or offer. So if you're using your smoothie as a true meal replacement, you certainly do need to think about the caloric amount that's in your smoothie to ensure that it's actually filling enough to help carry you through that period of the day, that's your meal. So far with my protein, veggies, and my fruit, there is no fat, there's no like high calorie density food that's gone into that smoothie. And so if I'm using a smoothie in patients to help them support weight gain, to help them with bulking, to help them manage a relatively low appetite. So often when patients are not feeling well, are sick, burned out, depressed, we need to be quite impactful with every meal that does get in. We're having a really good conversation about how to increase the caloric content of their smoothie so that they get a lot of bang for their buck. And that might look like adding a quarter to a half an avocado. That might look like adding a tablespoon of almond butter. That might look like adding some coconut oil, although that is really not my preference as a saturated fat source. I know all the keto people are going to come after me for saying that, but I really think that there are some like healthier and more robust ways of increasing healthy calories in your smoothie than adding coconut oil. But those are the kinds of foods that could be added, hemp hearts, chia seeds, that create that that give that additional weighting as far as calories and fat grams go, so that the smoothie itself has more sustainability as far as like energy is concerned. And then some of those things that we put in that are like more functional foods or maybe even powdered supplements. I mentioned creatine, but there are a lot of other powdered or liquid supplements that you may be taking on a regular basis that if you can stack that habit into your smoothie may help you with your compliance and get it in more often and more regularly. Those are the kind of like additional things that we may sway the smoothie with, like plus or minus, right? Like you can add or take away lots of healthy fats there by either including or excluding some of those pieces. But if you're listening and you're like, oh, I was using my smoothie for weight loss, and actually now that you're saying it, Jordan, my smoothie is like almost 50% of my caloric needs for the day, which has definitely happened in practice where I've sat down and mapped out what people are putting in their smoothie because they heard like, I heard hemp hearts are good. I heard avocado was good. I heard chia seeds were good. What they get left with is a smoothie that is more than a meal would be as far as fuel goes, but that was misaligned with what their goal was. And so I'm not saying it's bad to have a 600 or 700 calorie smoothie. Sometimes that is the absolute goal, but is that in alignment with why you're doing it? Which is, I go back to what we started with, was you got to ask yourself, like, why are you doing the smoothie? And then let's line up all of those ingredients in a way that actually meets your needs. And then the last one is liquid. And you certainly can use a lot of different liquid options to support your smoothie. And that choice has to meet what your actual needs are. So I typically use water in my smoothie, and part of that is because I don't drink enough water during my workday, and I know that I can put 750 mils of water into my smoothie, and it's like a couple cups of water that's added to my day as a consequence of my smoothie. It's not that I'm trying to avoid other liquids, it's that the liquid I'm missing the most in my life is water, and so I use water as the liquid in my smoothie. You can use other milk options, such as milk, or some of the alternative milks. But again, I always want to ask that question, like, why? Why are you using those things? Of the milk options, both milk, like cow's milk, and soy milk have additional protein content in their cup, right? So the cup of milk that is helping support the nutritional content of your smoothie. So when we ask patients to use soy milk or milk, we're asking them to add additional nutrition and additional calcium and additional protein to their smoothie. We may ask patients to use soy milk because we're using the soy milk for a specific purpose. Perhaps it's to help support lowering their blood cholesterol. Perhaps it's to help support decrease their hot flashes, right, or their night sweats. We may be using the soy as a functional food for a specific reason. But then we get into all the other alternative milks. And I'll tell you, if you're not using it for taste, you don't need to use it at all. So the other alternative milks from a health perspective are really not offering anything besides taste. The number of almonds in almond milk is not enough to have a positive health effect. There's oat milk, there's cashew milk. Like, truly, if you're going to choose one of those milks, do it because it enhances the taste and texture of your smoothie and makes it more palatable. Don't think you're doing it for some sort of health-related benefit, because none of those milks have a health-related benefit. They're expensive. They don't offer a whole lot nutritionally. And I mean, some patients even they can upset your stomach just based on the number of things we need to include in an almond milk to make almonds into milk. It's not a particularly wholesome nutritional product. But on the contrary to that, it literally doesn't have enough nuts in it per cup to offer what nuts are offering you if you just eat the nuts. So if you need an alternative milk and the milk that you're choosing is helping enhance the flavor and texture of your smoothie, then by all means, right? I'm all for choosing nutritional things that make you happy. But I also want you to just make sure that that's why you're doing it, and that you don't think that you're getting some sort of special nutritional value from using that alternative milk. There's nothing wrong with water. There's nothing wrong with milk. There's nothing wrong with soy milk. And those three other options may be fitting your needs better. I just would seriously think about, why you're doing it. So the last thing I want to sort of touch on, and this is a bit more of I'm going to call it an advanced smoothie topic, is that it does not have to be the same every day. Why do we feel like we need to eat the same every day? And part of why I think that is, or what I've come to sort of feel about it, is that we're so far away from understanding our relationship with food and why we are eating certain things. People don't have basic nutritional knowledge to know that they need protein and that they need all of these different foods, that we can't actually make decisions for ourselves about food. I think we've stopped trusting ourselves to be able to make decisions about food for various reasons. Diet culture, I'm sure, is a culprit. We're at least just going to blame it. But really, I think we like recipes, we like prescriptions about food because it absolves us from having to be connected to our nutrition any deeper than that. But I actually don't think that gets us where we want you to go when it comes to your health. You should be able to make a dynamic decision about your smoothie that changes. I almost used the word pivot, but we don't use that word anymore in 2021. I want you to make a dynamic decision about your smoothie that fits your day's needs, your performance goals, your nutritional gaps, right? So my smoothie looks different all the time. It will look different week over week, sometimes day to day. Sometimes there's 2 in a day. If the day is really off the rails, I'll take 2 and they might be different. So when you think back to our conversation today, it's like purpose, protein, veggies, fruits, other / miscellaneous, liquid, the number of combinations that can be to fit your needs. It's like, is this replacing a meal? Is this an addition to a meal? Is this filling a nutritional gap that I can't seem to get in? Is this just a highly convenient snack, right? Asking yourselves those questions should help you be able to pivot your smoothie to meet your needs. The last thing I'm going to say about it is that just because you once had one smoothie that tasted like garbage doesn't mean that this is not for you. Right? So often when I talk to adults about their nutrition, at the end of it, they say things like, I don't like vegetables, or I don't like fruit, or I don't like smoothies, or I don't like the texture of that, or I don't like protein powder. And yet their values are eat better, find solutions to meet my nutritional needs, lose weight, or whatever it is. And they're like total tough love moment, but not every smoothie is going to taste good. And I think that there is some absolute benefit to drinking it anyways. I said it. Drink the smoothie anyways, even if it tastes like garbage, right? Imagine yourself as your 8-year-old self, and you are being served that steamed broccoli that came out of the microwave in in the 1980s or maybe 70s, and your mom made you eat the broccoli anyways, right? That's the kind of experience that sometimes I think we need to take with these changes we're making to nutrition, because absolutely not, that smoothie is not going to taste as good as the breakfast sandwich that you usually buy from Starbucks. It just isn't. And that's okay. It's better, right? It's more nutritious. Of course, it's not as good, but remember why you're doing it, right? Remember why you're thinking about making a change at all. And the discomfort of the change is something you can overcome. It has to be more important to overcome that discomfort than the discomfort of staying the same, right? Never changing your nutrition, never trying something new, never hitting your protein needs, never hitting your vegetable needs. That's uncomfortable too. It's just not discomfort that we feel right away. That's discomfort that accumulates over years and years of us not meeting our own nutritional needs. And the discomfort of chugging that one shitty smoothie that you made, is in the here and now, right? And it's so easy to dump it down the drain, give the rest of the protein powder to your teenage son and say, I'm never doing that again. I want you to sit in the discomfort of trying something new and trying a gross smoothie. I don't want you to have a gross smoothie. I want you to live through your gross smoothie, because I think there is a resiliency building that happens from us doing things that are good for us, even if there's less of that instant dopamine hit that you would get from the donut or the breakfast sandwich or the oat fudge bar that goes beautifully with the coffee. I think there's some healing in that that I want you to give it a shout or give it a shot and see how you do, because I honestly think that there is something there that we all can just, put our big girl pants on a little bit and do positive things for our nutrition and drink the smoothie. Drink the smoothie.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Women's Health Unplugged. My goal is to help you feel more confident about your health. Please remember that what we talked about today in the podcast does not constitute medical advice, nor was a doctor-patient relationship formed. If you have questions about your healthcare or about how today's topic pertains to you, please take it up with your family doctor, your specialist, or someone on your health team.